Hello, everyone. I'm Sign1News anchor Vanessa Paloma Bajarnik. Here's a quick look at the top trending international news stories making headlines today. If you post an interesting comment about this update, we may add it at the bottom of the screen. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, a member of Putin's government, for war crimes. According to the U.S. and several European governments, Putin's administration has carried out a plot to forcibly deport thousands of Ukrainian children to Russia, often to a network of dozens of camps where the minors undergo political re-education. Russia has said reports of forcible relocation are absurd and says it does its best to keep minors with their families. The ICC announcement comes just days after several U.S. news outlets reported the court was planning to open 2 war crimes cases tied to the invasion of Ukraine and issue arrest warrants against several people. Young people from around the world led a day of action against modern-day slavery on Saturday, using the hashtag #MyFreedomDay. Across Asia, there's a growing number of people who thought they were traveling for a high-paying job, but were instead held captive and forced to work as cyber criminals. It is a growing human trafficking trend. According to the International Labor Organization, 50 million people worldwide are now enslaved, up 25% from the last estimate in 2016. Experts say cyber scam traffickers have exploited unemployment from the COVID-19 pandemic to lure tens of thousands of people. China, Indonesia, Pakistan, Thailand, and Vietnam have all issued warnings about high salary job offers from Cambodia. Hong Kong authorities are warning travelers at the airport of scams and have set up a dedicated task force for victims. At least 310 people were detained this week in Paris. The Interior Minister says protests erupted after the government's decision to force through pension reforms. Garbage workers are on strike because of the reforms. Now, many streets in Paris are full of trash bags. France's interior minister says he respects the strike, but the unsanitary conditions are not acceptable. The French government is hoping to have a balanced pension budget by 2030. If no pension changes are made, forecasts are showing a deficit of more than $14 billion in just 7 years from now. It's the main reason why the government decided to force its unpopular reforms into law without a full parliamentary vote. And that decision sparked fierce protest. Union and government leaders says there's only one person responsible: President Emmanuel Macron. Israel President Isaac Herzog warns that his country is on the brink of civil war during a passionate speech this week. Herzog has been trying to bring all parties together to negotiate judiciary reforms. His proposal would place some limits on the court's power and require the court to have a 2/3 majority to overturn legislation. But members of the ruling coalition dismissed his proposal almost as soon as he finished speaking. They say the changes would destroy the independence of Israel's judiciary and harm minority rights. A stinky situation is brewing in the Atlantic Ocean, and it is threatening to have a negative impact on your summer travel plans. A 5,000-mile wide blob of smelly and potentially dangerous seaweed is heading for the shores of many seaside tourist destinations. The seaweed has formed large blooms in the Atlantic Ocean for years. But this year's mass could be the largest on record, spanning from the coast of Africa to the Gulf of Mexico. Researchers say the blob is expected to pass through the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico during the summer, hitting Florida beaches around July. They're calling it a catastrophic problem for tourism in the Caribbean region. It can also be hazardous to human health. That's because it emits a toxic gas that can cause respiratory problems. According to UK's Media, Culture and Sports Department, the coronation of King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla will be broadcast at over 30 sites across the UK. Cardiff Castle, Belfast City Hall, and Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester are just some of the sites that have been confirmed. That means thousands of people will have an opportunity to come together at public screens to celebrate the historic moment in towns and cities across the four nations of the UK. The coronation is scheduled to take place on Saturday, May 6th, at Westminster Abbey in London. Australian surfer Blake Johnson has broken the Guinness World Record for the longest surf session. He caught more than 570 waves in almost 40 hours. Johnson told reporters that the effort was in honor of his father, who took his life 10 years ago. His record-breaking effort raised over $250,000 for youth mental health. Sign1News will be broadcasting international news updates every Sunday. A big thank you to our Sign1News app supporters. You help make this broadcast happen. You can download the Sign1News app by heading to the App Store or Google Play Store on your smartphone. And you can also watch on Apple TV, Amazon, and Roku.